We weren't expecting this crowd on
I
Wednesday.
know. How are you all free at 3:30 on a weekday afternoon?
I think this is the only time you can come.
Suspicious.
I think, Kiran, this is the only time you can come into BKC. I was very, when the Knot team messaged me saying they wanted me to speak to Kiran, I was very, very excited. And it was very strange and because I was reading her novel at that time because it was obviously everywhere. And this was, I think, I was on my 5-week holiday, the last leg where I could travel. So I was like, I need to just get out of the city and just be out till the doctor says you cannot travel anymore, you need to come back home. And this is the perfect book for me to read. It was, like I said, like we were having a conversation, Kiran and I have a conversation inside where I was like, it reminded me of when I first read Unbearable Lightness of Being. It was that novel made me want to go back to certain pages and read them again to understand what I was reading and kind of sit with it and then read again. And this is very similar. So it took me a while. Usually, like I was saying, I like race through books. But this book, I sat with it and I read, and it took me a while. And I don't know, it's because I was 6 or 7 months pregnant at that time, or it was because I was on holiday, or because it was the book you wrote. But whatever it was, it made that atmosphere. That was the atmosphere that it created, and I was very, very moved by it because of it. So,
Thank you, Sonam. One, thank you so much for doing this. It's such an honor and such a pleasure for me to be in conversation with you. And it's just funny, a lot of people, the readers I'm getting messages from now, have read this book because they were pregnant or because they were injured. And a lot of people said they had surgery on their knees, and this was a book they could read during that time. I'm often asked, of course, what books inspired. This one, quite often, I think a writer writes a book, the secret reason you write is to place a book on the shelf alongside other books that you love. That's the real reason you're writing. And I went back with this book, with Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny. I think I went back to when I was a student and I was reading in this little college in Vermont, with really snowbound, freezing, and being a foreign student, I would spend winters pretty much on my own with 1 or 2 other foreign students who couldn't go home. And I read, and those were the years when I read Anna Karenina, and books like Snow Country by Kawabata, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Love in the Time of Cholera had just come out at that time, and Unbearable Lightness of Being. So it was certainly, when you said that, it's certainly one of the books that I've been mentioning when I've been talking about the inspirations. And
I had no idea.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. You just said that, and you said it's a book that it stays with you, but it's a love story, but there are darker undercurrents, and there's something about the mood of that book. And what interested me when I read it, and this is a long time ago, of course, now, but that mood has also stayed with me. I remember, sometimes, you don't remember the plot of a book which you read 30 years ago, but you still remember the emotion of reading it. And it's a book it's a love story which is not an easy or simple one. It's actually, for women, can be quite upsetting in a way, because there's a real power divide between the woman and the man, and that's interesting. But it's also, it's not just centered on one couple, it's centered on several. And that became important to me when I was writing Loneliness. I was interested in how the stories around Sonia and Sunny influenced their love story. But it's also a book about borders and exile. And that's also important to Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny. It's also about those divides and migrating and very dark politics. So that was the other undercurrent there.
Yeah, and because I have like 30 questions, and she was like, we can't ask all these questions, but I'm just going to go with the conversation where the conversation is flowing. And I think we've actually had a little time to discuss behind, and I was telling her that while living abroad seems glamorous, and especially for us South Asians, we're like, we feel like that's the ticket to a better life. And it, you mentioned this quite often in the novel, that it's isolating and lonely. And you also moved from India, like you just
Yes.
mentioned,
When I was 16.
16 years old, and I can see that the theme is see, I'm asking you questions from my perspective as well. I moved back to Mumbai because I was very lonely, and that's why again this novel resonated with me a lot. Is that one of the main reasons you wrote this?
Absolutely. You know, I'm profoundly acquainted with loneliness in all its different moods, from solitude and, to loneliness and the good side, the bad side. But this, in the kind of opening scene of the book, is centered on, I went back to family stories, and it's centered on the veranda, my grandparents' veranda that I used to visit when I was a child. We used to take that overnight train from Delhi to Allahabad. And they were lonely Gujaratis in Allahabad, by the way. They themselves had made a huge journey. But we would take that overnight train and we would read on the train the kinds of
Yeah.
books we were speaking about just back there.
Yeah.
Those childhood books.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
Enid Blytons and the Jane Eyres and
the
Jane
Jane
Austens
Austens
and
and
Sherlock
Bronte
Holmes
sisters
and
and-
Bronte's things. And then we would arrive on this veranda. And so the book begins there. It's somehow been the heart of my writing life, that veranda, strangely. I never would have thought so. But in the novel, there's, the character Sonia is lonely in Vermont the way I was. And the grandparents get this news and they said she's crying all the time. And they said, and so why is she crying all the time? And they say she's lonely. And the grandparents have no idea and they have no understanding of it because they have some idea of what it means to, be misunderstood or because you can be lonely in a crowd of people, but to be physically alone. And I think that's the biggest difference between life here and life in the West,
Yeah.
is that you're physically, completely alone.
And the weather is
the
so
weather.
different. People don't understand. It's dark, and sometimes
Yes.
there's light that doesn't end, which is unbearable as well.
Yes.
And sometimes this darkness starts at like
Dark's
3.
at 4.
Yeah,
Dark is at
and
4.
it's unbearable. So and in India we used to, even if you're lonely in a crowd, like you said, there's still human bodies around you.
Yes.
And you're never alone. And that is the one thing, So
yeah, that's the startling
Yeah.
difference, I think.
So the other question that I wanted to ask you was that, for me, the book, sometimes I finish reading a book or I finish watching a film and I'm done with it. And usually these days that's what happens because that's the way people are writing books, shows, movies, etc. But this book really lingers after you've finished it. Okay? I feel like the feeling stays with you. Do you think about how long a book stays with a reader while you're writing it, or it's just something that is I think it's your style, but I want it to come from you. Like, what is it that you feel? Because it's a different way of writing than what everybody else is doing these days.
Yeah, because it also took me 20 years,
Yeah.
to work on this book. So let's say
I know
and
that. I read that.
And it was, I'm shocked. I would have said 10 years, but not 20. So that's a significant part of your life. That's almost a quarter of your life.
That is half
right?
mine.
It's a dramatic amount of time to disappear into a work, into a book. And I think it is because I needed to live some life to write it. And you're talking about it lingering. And I think it is perhaps because I went back into the past of our grandparents, to our parents, into our generation. So it sort of taps into, into this river, and that we are all sort of part of this journey that we don't often think about, but we're all part of this journey of several generations generations experiencing migration, movement, changes. So going back to, and I thought this was actually also the last time I would be able to write about India in this way, because my father died while I was writing this book in 2008. but I still had been going home during the process of writing this book. And I knew with him, when he went, I felt I was as if I'd lost not just him, but also India in a way. And this was a way of continuing to connect myself to India and perhaps also making use of that last opportunity. And I wanted to write about these grandparents who had lived in British India and had moved from a tiny town in Gujarat to England. My grandfather joined the civil service, came back. My mother's side was half German, half, her father was from Bangladesh, which is now Bangladesh. And they lost both Germany and Dhaka landscapes. They lost both their languages. They no longer spoke German or Bengali. It was suddenly a new life in Delhi, in old Delhi. Hindi became the new language, English and Hindi.
I think a lot of people from, at least from Mumbai, we have a community over here where Sindhis, Parsis,
Yes. People
Punjabis, Gujaratis who, would like the stories. My grandfather used to work for State Bank of India, so he also went to London for a bit. So it's a very some of the themes are very, they resonate with you.
And also they're deep in our bones,
Yeah, 100%,
because
yeah.
did your grandparents talk a lot about these stories?
100%. I mean, I can still remember my nani saying, they used to have chatais, which they used to spray with
Water.
rose water sometimes, and the air used to come in through, and it would smell really nice.
Yeah.
And she would talk about that, or how she wanted to study music, and she had to cycle a long way off. And then her mother said, you can't go alone cycling to learn music or dance. Or my dadi would, tell me that this is how they used to make the, besan ka laddus, or how they used to make the achars in the house.
So fascinating.
And those stories actually weirdly stay with you more than any of the other stories that you have
Yeah, they really
heard.
do. They do. It's so strange. My grandmother would tell me about how the English would come to this little town in Gujarat, when they would come on an inspection tour and tot up all the numbers and go shooting or whatever as they did. And she remembered this English woman who would come in a big hat.
Yeah.
And also the stories of growing up in a joint family.
Yeah.
Before anybody was, when it was a completely talking
Having
of
7 or
loneliness.
8 sisters and brothers living
Yes.
together.
Yes.
It's not now. It's not that way anymore.
No, and then they made these huge journeys.
Yeah.
And also, emotionally, so from at least my grandparents, from being deeply linked to religion, caste, community, all of these things, they broke all of that deliberately, very deliberately, to try to belong to a completely different idea of India, and the way they spoke about India was just fascinating to me. They made that journey, changed everything about themselves.
Yeah. I mean,
The habits, the eating, the attitudes.
yeah, and it's very hard. I'm married to a Sindhi as well, and both of us don't speak the language, and Sindhis are pretty anglicized in a way where, and my nani's father was a doctor, and they were all freedom fighters at the end. So they were all pretty Hindi speaking and anglicized.
Yeah.
And so by the time I think it came to my mom, she was speaking to her in English. And
Yeah.
they were in Mumbai by then, and Bombay, what they used to call it Bombay. And then when it came to me, my mom never spoke to me in Sindhi, so I don't know it. And similarly with my husband.
His language was English and Hindi? Or?
He's English and Spanish.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. That's because he's, like I said, he was in New
been
York.
brought.
So, but yeah, his Hindi is pretty good. Not great, but it's pretty good. And his mom would speak to him in English as well.
Yeah, this is what it was. Because they had changed so much that we all grew up really anglicized.
Super anglicized, yeah.
And emphasizing English, and the education had to be in English.
Convent schools.
Yeah. And, sometimes it was kind of traumatic. Like my father, I think, never spoke about this, but he didn't speak Gujarati, and he'd been sent to boarding school from when he was age 4, which was also quite common.
And it's a very common thing. Like my mom wanted me to go to boarding school. Like it was a thing in the family that we have to go to boarding school.
And so young.
Yeah.
And then, so when he would come back, he didn't really share a language with his mother. You know, she spoke Hindi and Gujarati, and he was so English speaking. And so the tragedy then becomes enormous.
Yeah.
When so that kind of thing was interesting to me, and then to think of that generation to our parents' generation, and they were also born in British India. My mother was 10 when partition happened. My father would have been 15, and she always says it was the biggest thing she's ever witnessed. You know, that in those, it was so early on, but she said that was the biggest event of her lifetime when Delhi changed, and Delhi became a refugee city.
Yeah.
The whole flavor of the city changed,
Yeah.
and the neighborhood changed. Our families, the neighbors vanished overnight, which is written about quite a lot. And so thinking about then, but writing about these histories, thinking about really what happens in the relationships between two people, let alone families. You know, in my parents' generation, my parents separated. What does that mean? In those days, very few people got divorced.
Yeah.
And they would say something like, the woman is a bit, you know, the wife went a bit crazy and she went up to the mountains. People would say things like that. So I wanted to capture that kind of sadness too, of two fractured people coming together and not making it.
Lines of trauma, right?
Yeah.
I would say that, you know, you see I think in the longer you live a life, and there's always generational learning and trauma. And I think trauma comes with learning, and it's almost like an inheritance.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was...
It is probably, that's why I call my last book Inheritance of Loss, because I've been working on these themes a long time.
So, and I kind of love that. And, you know, what I love about the story is that it leaves you with questions rather than answers. And I think, like I said, again, like with this, in this day and age, with the kind of life we all lead, I think sometimes it's better not to be too literal and to be able to think about things. And is that something you value as well in fiction? Like the openness of themes and questions, and for people to have interpretations?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this also when you're talking about such a busy landscape, and Sonia and Sunny are out in the big cosmopolitan world, so their long unresolved relationship is out in the big world. So I was talking about how all the divides that they encounter influence their love story. So the divides you experience in the Western world between different races, you know, and different power divides, class divides between India and the rest of the world, all of these things, and how they sort of seep into every small conversation. So the book is a lot about, there's the story of the book, but what I was really concentrating on were the empty spaces. And the way I was constructing the book was, you know, those old Japanese paintings, Chinese and Japanese paintings, where you will see just a branch of a cherry tree, for example. And it's really not about the branch, it's about all the space around.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking a lot about that. As much as I was thinking of the actual plot, I was thinking about the absence.
Even Raza does that. There's a modern master from India, and he has his most famous work is called the Bindu.
Oh, I love the Bindu series.
Yeah, so it's
I put it in my book, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of this, a Bindu painting.
Yeah, so
love
that's why I'm
those.
bringing it up, right?
Yeah.
So that theme of having that space,
Yes.
and having that significance of, you know, we think of India as very full,
Yes.
but we have a lot of things in our country which are very austere as well, right?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
and
those Dhyan paintings and the Bindu paintings.
yeah, and not only art, I'm talking about religion. There are few religions, like whether it's
Absolutely.
Jainism, Sikhism, there's
Buddhism.
there's austerity
Because
in that as
austerity
well.
is central to the
Yeah.
spiritual practice.
Yes,
As it
exactly.
is to the artistic practice, I think.
Exactly. So I like that, right? Like, even like this is another question. I don't know if I think it's related to that. Because even when I see you, very different from me, you're very austere in the way you approach and the way you speak about things. So even though the characters feel very distant from each other, the reader, because of the way you write, I think, like I said, even though there is a style to your writing, which are a lot of words and it's quite descriptive,
Yeah.
there is distance, there is space in it, like you said.
Yeah.
But the reader, I still feel as a reader very close to them. So how, I feel like you've answered it, but I feel like if you can answer it more, how do you create such intimacy without over-explaining the inner workings?
Yeah. Well, one thing I will say is that it's really very difficult to write, and the last book was so political, and it's very hard to write a love story and to talk about those intimate moments and those conversations people have, which often are people dancing around silences, right, and are not wanting to reveal themselves too much because these are moments of enormous vulnerability. So that is interesting to me to see what people are saying and what they're withholding. But also, I think trying to think, as I said, about these empty spaces, non-spaces, divides between entities, countries, nations, people, all of these different things. And then when we're talking about India, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of these philosophies, also thinking about how in the West these empty spaces are considered nihilistic, they're considered terrifying, but here, actually I think there's one line in the book which is repeated several times, which is the void of the East is not the void of the West. Because for us the void is actually a creative space. So it's also a generative space. It's a frightening space. There are phantoms in that space, but they're also things that can manifest into wonderful beings. So I wanted to also talk about the positive side of loneliness and solitude as a time of self-reinvention. As a time of solace. There are times when it's a necessary loneliness, and also a time when I think you decide to speak against the herd, against the consensus. That's a very lonely, brave voice when you make that decision.
Yeah.
It's a very ethical choice.
I feel like a lot of our spiritual practices also kind of encourage that, right? Like, I've never done it. I don't know if anybody's done Vipassana, but the idea of being alone with your thoughts.
Yes, I haven't done that either. Maybe
Yeah.
we should one day.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I want to be that alone with my thoughts, but I value my time by myself. I kind of my sister says that you create this den for yourself, and I kind of like to even when I'm reading. Sometimes for me, it's very important to have that, especially when you have children. You need that. And I've always wanted that. I've always liked that, and I'm drawn to books.
Yeah, well, the readers always got a loneliness to them. I think readers are always somewhat lonely for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They're seeking out the bookshelf.
Yeah,
Same with the writer. A writer has to be lonely to some degree, I think.
so are actors.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like if you're an actor, like I said, you have to read for the rest of your life if you're an actor. If you decide you want to be an actor, you're either reading scripts or you're reading books that are inspired by scripts, or you're basically in English or Hindi class for the rest of your life. And I kind of and I like that process of being by myself and understanding, and then you all have an editor. I have an editor who makes me better.
Yes. Then you have to put your book out into the world. But maybe that's why I held on to it. And I actually wish I'd taken one more year. Because I don't have enough perspective on it. I would have changed the ending, I think. I would have changed the notes of the ending.
I was going to come to that.
Yes.
I was going to come to... wait, where is that question? Where is that? The lovely
the open-ended
question.
ending.
The open-ended ending. Yeah, I mean, I can't find it, so I'm just going to ask you. I love the fact that you kept the ending open-ended. You kept it open for interpretation. The storylines weren't. It was not like a neat bow. Nothing was neatly tied up. Everything. Life is messy. People are messy. People. there are always questions. There are more questions than answers. And that is the most wonderful and terrible thing about life.
Yes.
And I love the fact that the ending was open ended. And I want to know, is that how you see life? Is that how you're going to always end your novels?
That's how I see art, really. I mean, that you catch characters at a moment and you focus on that little bit of time and then you let your characters go. And
Know the end. Know the end with a full stop.
Yes. And also because of these empty spaces and, there are a lot of water images, ocean images, rivers and clouds. So it felt appropriate to just place them there at the very end.
I mean, I love that. And can I end the question? You finished this book in 20 years, not 21.
Yes.
Your tours are almost done, or are you still doing some more?
Still doing more.
Okay. But you're going to be in India for a bit?
In India, tomorrow's the last stop.
Okay,
Isn't that
so
sad?
it's done
Tomorrow's
for India.
Kalakora, last stop.
No. So what's
Yeah.
next for you? After, I'm talking about books or stories or...
What will I do next?
Yes. Somebody always asks you this question, so I think it's fair to ask you this question. What's next?
What you say.
And I never know what to say.
Maybe I can steal your answer. There are themes, because this book was so, I wrote 5,000 pages. No, there was this huge, huge pile of paper. I know there are things in there that I want to go back to, buried in there that I jettisoned, because we were talking about this earlier.
Yes.
Again, the open-ended question, but also why do you pick certain
Things, because,
and
yeah.
leave certain ones out?
Do you want me to answer the question?
Answer it. Answer.
No, okay, I'm going to tell you the backstory to this. I don't think everybody will. So I had written 25 questions, and then yesterday the Nod team said, we have a few questions, that she'd written 5,000 pages. and then she's like, what are the plot lines you missed? And I was like, as an actor and as a person who's been in the film industry for a while, and my family's been in the film industry for a while, we usually don't like to give the plot lines that we've edited out. We don't keep them because it's unnecessary fat. So for me, that question, I know why she left them out, because they were not necessary to the story that she wanted to tell now.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You come from a family of actors, and I come from a mother who's a writer. And she actually was looking at my 5,000 pages, but she read, and she's 88, she's going to be 89 this year, and she read it, poor thing, she read this book 3 times, I think.
If I tell you my dad's age, he'll kill me, so I'm not going to go there.
But she read, it was, I think, 1,000 pages. I don't think she didn't read all of those pages. But, she wrote a book last year. She published a book called Rosarita that's, I think, it's tiny. It's in the novella. It's 100 pages maybe. And she said, you can actually do it all in a few pages. was her advice. And you're right. You can distill and distill and distill. And perhaps as a master storyteller, you really get it down. And I think also as she's grown older, she does so much of the work inside her mind before she even begins.
Yeah.
And I do it all on the page before I can figure out what I'm doing.
My sister is a filmmaker, and we started our careers she started her career with me as an actor, and we got to a point where I was acting, and we were doing this romantic comedy, and she's like, it's a romantic comedy, you're not making a Bengali film, you don't need such long pauses.
That's so funny.
And I was like,
maybe those are the silences, because I'm half Bengali, half Gujarati.
That's exactly
the
what I was
silences
getting
and
there.
the melancholy may be coming just from that simple fact.
Yeah, and it was a Bengali filmmaker who's one of my favorite.
Moody, monsoony.
Shashank Ghosh, he's Bengali, so he and I get along because I love making those long pauses, and he loves capturing it.
Yeah.
And so I understand that, because sometimes you want to indulge in your thoughts.
Yeah, you do.
You know?
You do. And you begin to think of a book as a kind of piece of music in a way, talking of Bengal and, Bengali music and centering that. And so you're thinking of the spaces between notes, you're thinking of the rhythm of the whole
Yeah.
and you're indulging those spaces.
Yes.
You're creating them. I
Yes.
mean, a book is a lot about the emptinesses, and you're creating space
Yeah.
in some way or another. So you also
There's space everywhere, even between breath.
Uh,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So, should we?
Should we open it
yes.
up to questions? Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
I didn't read this book when I was pregnant or injured, but I did have two young children sort of pulling at all my limbs and my hair, and I had to sneak away, and so I was put out in other ways. But I wanted to say, first of all, it's so lovely to be here and to hear you talk about the book. I really loved reading the book, and I hope it's okay for me to say this, and Ridhima isn't going to be like, we're never inviting you back, but there were times when it was a really infuriating read, and it was only the beauty of the writing that kept me going, because the characters themselves
Were
just
dark?
drove me nuts. I mean, it was infuriating, and so this isn't a critique, it's a question. But
Yeah.
my question is, when you are writing it, especially over 20 years, right? Do you ever tire of your own characters? And how do you see them? Are you like a benevolent puppeteer or despot? Or are you on the same level as them and you're watching them grow? Like, how does it work? Because they're so human. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. Yeah, they're difficult. A lot of them are difficult characters. And a lot of them, some of them are dark characters, but I have to say my favorite one is the most preposterous one, which is Babita, who I loved writing her.
Yeah, she was a good one, though. She was good, yeah.
That
She
was
wasn't
that-
the infuriating
That
one.
was a lot of fun. So I think also probably trying to, work with different notes, different registers, different kinds of loneliness, actually, which they sort of all represent in one way. They all come up against some kind of unknowing. But, I didn't tire of them, which is the only reason I could carry on for all of those years. But there must have been something that I was trying to solve. There was some dilemma that I was trying to solve, and I kept on and on working away at it. And trying to decide, some of the characters, 5,000 pages, a lot of the themes had to be cut out, a lot of the characters had to go. So I had to decide which ones to keep and what they had to say to each other and keep the balance between them. But also really talking about how their stories affect each other, how Satya's relationship affects Sunny's relationship, how you're and thinking of a much larger landscape. But no, I didn't tire of them, although I found them infuriating as well. I think you don't work as a puppeteer, you kind of become your characters.
Also, I
Right.
think,
Do you
if
feel
you
that
don't
when
mind,
acting?
I want to interject. I feel like sometimes characters, as an actor, sometimes you get infuriated as well with some of the characters, and I'm sure as
bet.
an author as well. But they're like your children. They might be infuriating, but you love them, and you're okay with some of the mistakes that they make, and you just learn to analyze it and live with them and figure it out. I mean, I hope I'm not answering for you.
No, this is a very interesting thing. But when you're acting, you internalize it, don't you? Do you think about what the character's feeling at that moment?
So, it's really interesting. For me, I feel like you're a sieve, right? At the end of the day, where the emotions are coming out of. And when you're a sieve, there is a bit of you also that comes through. So, even though I see there are actors here, even though you feel like it's somebody else and somebody else is given you the character, there's always a bit of you that you leave behind.
Yeah, I was reading a book, which I think you would actually love, Sonam, called Audition by Katie Kitamura.
Okay.
Because it's about an actor and it's about motherhood. So it's really interesting
Okay,
to think
okay.
how motherhood influences an actor. But one of the lines in the book was that the membrane between the acting life and real life is actually much more porous than people
100%,
imagine.
like I said, it's a sieve. There's no,
That's what you
there's you leave something of the character stays back with you, and something of you is always in that character
Yeah.
because it's you're basically the filter through which the character is coming through. So it will be that.
Yeah.
And I see that in writing as well. after I'm meeting you, I don't know you very well, but I've read your books. So I always feel like there's, like you say, there's a style, but there's a certain tonality to the characters, which is always going to be there. Because
Yes.
it is a part of you're basically multiple personalities that are coming through, and you're
Yeah.
figuring things out,
Yeah.
so it's interesting that way. I infuriate myself a lot of the times as well.
We all do, I guess.
And also the characters you meet in your life. Like I think part of why you write is because, or an artist works is because of things that happened long before you were born. And my grandparents were a mystery to me. This grandfather I was talking about was much more present in Inheritance of Loss, actually, as a character of a judge. I couldn't understand him. So there's the mystery of that character, who's a dark character, actually, not an easy person. And so a lot of writing is trying to understand who this person was and how it
Interesting,
echoes. And something of that echoes in me, like Sonam was saying she doesn't speak the language of her grandparents, and I don't either. But then I go to that, there's a scene, opening scene of the book where the characters go to the jewelry locker and they're trying on all these jewels, and my parents would take me, my grandmother would take me. I don't speak the same language, but the ring or the bracelet would fit perfectly. And I think, there's some connection.
Yeah.
I belong to these people and I don't know them.
Thank you.
I want to gush. It's a book club, and I think your book is magnificent.
Thank you so
it's
much.
Absolutely
Thank you
magnificent.
so much. So sweet.
It's a major accomplishment. It's 700 pages almost. I breezed through it in a year that
Wow.
Indian publishing has reached great highs, I think. It started for me, with Arundhati Roy's book,
Yes.
which a lot of us may have read. There was Amrita Mahale's book before that called Real Life, which is a wonderful book.
Called Real
I think
Life?
It's called Real Life. There was Rahul Bhattacharya's book
I
called
love
Real
that book.
Song. Yeah. And then it was your book, and it really did make me forget a lot of what I loved through the year. Anyway, I could go on. It's a book that you mentioned Anna Karenina, and
Yes.
you mentioned Milan Kundera, but especially the 19th century novel. I think this, in many ways, to me, was crafted, or it took me back. I was
So reading
sometimes
books like Middlemarch and
absolutely,
things like that?
or even Tolstoy or Charles Dickens, So there was
Yeah.
social realism and there was magic realism. And again, I could go on and on, but my question to you here is, it's so easy to get seduced by the idea of magic realism in particular, and you've somehow managed to rein that in, or rein that in might not be the correct phrase. It's not been overused, It's not a trick that's been from Badal Baba to the,
Yes.
the sea dog and things like
Yes.
that. There is the idea of the spiritual/supernatural,
Yeah.
which recurs in the book, and I find it to be absolutely masterful. How you've not run away with it. Another thing I want to say, again, I said I'm going to be deceitful. These are just thoughts and not questions.
No, this is a book club, so
yeah,
this is
yeah.
nice to just talk.
Thanks. I feel, what did I feel? I feel many things. Babita, the character of Babita, and Meena Foy, I feel there are parallels between a lot of the characters. That
Yeah.
awful Ilan, and sorry for the people who've not read the book,
Yes.
the absolutely monstrous Ilan, but who oddly reminded me of the grandfather and his notebooks in some ways. Now, I don't know whether that is something that you've consciously put in, but there were parallels as a reader that perhaps, I don't know. That's, and there's a question that came to me and it has just quickly run off again. Maybe I'll steal the mic again, but I think
Okay.
I've said many things.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
think it was wonderfully articulate.
Yes, it was.
I think
The-
she's blushing from here
The
to
magic
there.
realism.
It's fantastic. I think there's a lady on that table.
I want to say that I really enjoy the granular way in which you've described physical as well as mental landscapes. From the coasters that houses had in the 1990s to the various moral registers of the characters, Babita in particular. I really enjoyed her character. She was one of my favorites as well. My question is, how long have you been journaling? Have you been journaling for a very long time? Because I'm just sort of curious about
Yeah,
how
maybe
you
you're
got
a
that
writer
detail.
as well, are you?
Yeah. But I don't journal or take notes, but I'm curious about your process.
Yeah, and thank you also for the previous comment because, with magic realism or what we call magic realism, I think actually all cultures are rooted much more deeply than that term, which popped up in the 1920s and began to be used as defining mostly non-Western literature. So I always have a problem with it. But I just felt like I couldn't leave out that part of human life, right? That
I feel like in our part of the world, it is something that we are constantly. It's always there.
we grew up with that music.
Yeah, it's the theme
But-
of our lives, right? Like it's not. So I'm so sorry. I don't know why I forgot to use the mic. I just feel like when a South Asian writer writes something, it's not. I don't know if it's a tool as much as a way of being, because we've grown up with those things in our life.
Yeah, and it's very important in our country, which is made up of so many different things. That mystical element is often the unifying element, so it's really important spiritually
Yeah.
to us. But that, and also, hallucinatory fear, nightmares that inform our daylight hours, all of these things I felt like I couldn't just leave out of the book. So I put that in. But journaling, writing journals, keeping diaries is what they used to call it. It's
Journaling is Gen Z.
my primary writing process is that. And this last
She's Gen Z.
journaling, so funny. Now sometimes I get requests saying the public of communal journaling, right? We'll all sit and
Yeah,
journal
in the morning
together.
you have to get rid of your
I
thoughts.
think of
in
it
the
as a
morning.
very independent, private moment.
brain dump.
But I'm killing myself for not having kept a diary in the last couple of years because so much has been happening across the world. I mean, and when you're putting together your own thoughts, what people are saying, and the political landscape, it's really powerful material to have. And so really my New Year's resolution is to go back to it. But this book was written completely out of diaries that I'd kept for years.
Priyanka.
So I have to ask as a writer, but there are also a full room of creatives, how do you keep the momentum going over 20 years and the same project?
I don't worry about it really. I don't mind if the months are going by, and I think I've often said I don't perceive anything. I don't experience writer's block. I don't think of it as writer's block. I experience moments where I'm not working well, but I actually enjoy those moments. I kind of really, it's all about emotional stamina. I mean, I sometimes have to teach writing, I sometimes teach, go into a classroom. But you're still deeply involved with it.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love the idea of being involved, but kind of
you're kind
being
of
overlooking it. I don't know how to
Yes.
explain it. I don't know if I'm explaining
both
it.
those things. You're somehow trying to just gain perspective on it, but writing does take developing that discipline takes you very far, but it takes having emotional stamina, certainly, and you learn it. You learn not to let doubt get you down, because you just sometimes, sort of midway through a writing career, I think you learn that, that time is going to pass. I think young people get terrified and stop, overwhelmed.
Anybody else? Oh, I can't see so far.
And you also have to trust that you're going to somehow get to the end, because it's such a mysterious process. You have no idea what you're working on. You have no idea what the end of the book is going to be, what it's going to feel like, look like. So there's so much trust, you really have to work, like I said in many interviews now, like an earthworm or a bee, or an ant. Like, just trust that you're building something bigger that's beyond your vision.
Hi, okay, I'll stand. Hi, Kiran. Hi, Sonam. This is Monica. I don't have a question from the book because I haven't completed it, but the session got me completely curious about Babita. Gosh. So, my question to you is an author. You would have written a story or a particular scene with your own narrative and your own perspective. But when you discover somebody else having their own perspective to it, what, as an author, that goes into it? Like, do you try and correct it, or like it's like a pleasant discovery for you?
So a lot of this book, another reason why it's so long, I think, is because every time I said something or wrote something, it seemed like the opposite was also true. And I had to put that in because you're writing about such a complex world. And yeah, India is true, the United States is true. One character says something, the other character thinks something else, and yet both those things have truth to them. So I just kept on adding perspectives, and a lot of whittling it down was needing to whittle it down because it was just that way you can just go on forever. But it is interesting when you publish a book and somebody comes up with something that contradicts what you're saying kind of profoundly, and all you can do is to take that wisdom with you when you're going forward into another project. I mean, I will say, for example, years ago with this last book of Inheritance, and I was talking about mysticism and saying how important it is not to have a nationalistic hold on land, because there's always a contradictory claim on that land. People, there's such a busy, complex world. There's so many claims upon every landscape now. And people are fighting over it so fiercely. And I was talking about the spiritual value of not thinking in those terms. And someone put up a hand and said, I'm from Palestine, and I don't agree with what you're saying at all. So I had to think about that. What does it mean? What does homeland mean to different people? Attachment to land. Thank you
Everyone.
so much. Thank you,
for a
Sonam.
lovely
That was
Yeah, you were
fantastic.
really lovely. Thank you
Thank you
very
for
being a
much.
wonderful audience.
Thank you, Kiran. I want you to know this is the first time I've done it. I've only done it because it was her.
Wasn't she spectacular?
I don't know about that. But thank you so much. And thank you for being patient with my mumbling questions. Thank you so much.